The flash of camera phones erupted across the country club ballroom as Victoria's face drained of color. The manila envelope she'd been triumphantly brandishing moments ago now trembled in her manicured hands. I watched from my seat beside grandmother Elizabeth as my sister, my tormentor for most of my life, realized the trap she'd set for me had become her own undoing. She's, she's the CEO, Victoria whispered, her voice barely audible over the sudden, deafening silence. The company, it's hers. All of it. I heard my mother's sharp intake of breath, saw my father's whiskey glass slip from his fingers and shatter on the marble floor. For 15 years, they had believed I was nothing, a failed marriage, a struggling single mother, a disappointment. Now, in the most public way possible, they were learning the truth. But this wasn't the vindication I'd imagined during those lonely nights after I'd walked away from them. This was something else entirely, something that felt less like triumph and more like a weight finally lifting from my chest. I am Eleanor Bradley, and this is the story of how I stopped living in my sister's shadow. Flashback, the breaking point, 15 years ago. I always knew you'd amount to nothing, my father, Howard, said that night 15 years ago, his words floating like poison across our parents' mahogany dining table. My mother, Margaret, dabbed at her mascara-streaked face with a linen napkin, her theatrical sniffing the perfect accompaniment to his judgment. Sweetheart, we just want what's best for you, she managed between sobs. If you'd just listened to Victoria about the job at her husband's firm, the entry-level position, the one where I'd be fetching her coffee while trying to raise my daughter alone. My voice was steadier than I felt. At 33, freshly divorced and raising a 7-year-old on my own, I'd hoped for understanding from my family. How naive I'd been. Victoria's perfect smile never wavered. Even at 37, she remained the golden child married to a wealthy financier, running charitable organizations, maintaining the social standing our parents cherished above all else. Everyone has to start somewhere, little sister, she said, cutting into her filet mignon with surgical precision. Some of us just start higher than others. The familiar knot in my stomach tightened. I'd lived in Victoria's shadow for as long as I could remember, watching her collect accolades while I collected criticisms. When Victoria got into Yale, our parents threw a party. When I earned a full scholarship to MIT, my father wondered aloud why I hadn't applied to an Ivy League school. When Victoria married at 25, it was a society event. When my marriage collapsed at 32, it became evidence of my poor judgment. I already have a job, I said quietly, thinking of my daughter Lily waiting at home with a babysitter. I'm doing well at the tech firm. They're considering me for a senior developer position. Playing with computers, my father interrupted, swirling his whiskey. He'd built his law practice from nothing, climbing the social ladder rung by desperate rung, and couldn't fathom why his daughter wouldn't follow a similar path to respectability. Meanwhile, your sister is running charitable organizations, making real differences in people's lives. I thought of the spreadsheets I'd glimpsed on Victoria's laptop during her last visit, numbers that didn't add up, transfers that seemed questionable. Making differences in her bank account, you mean, I muttered. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's smile finally cracked. What exactly are you implying? She hissed. Before I could respond, my mother jumped in. Eleanor, apologize to your sister right now. After everything she's done for you. Done for me? I laughed, and it sounded foreign even to my ears. What exactly has she done except ensure I never forgot my place? Mother had always been this way, a former high school teacher who'd internalized the importance of appearances above all. She'd been raised by a mother who demanded perfection, and she'd passed that burden on to us, though only Victoria seemed capable of meeting her impossible standards. That's enough. My father slammed his glass down. You've always been jealous of Victoria's success. If you spent half as much time working as you do complaining. I work 60 hours a week, I said, standing up. I'm leading development on a major project while raising my daughter alone. But you've never once asked about it, have you? I thought of my childhood, of bringing home report cards filled with this only to have my father ask about the single B+. I thought of piano recitals where my mistakes were discussed at length during the car ride home, while Victoria's hesitations were deemed artistic interpretations. Sit down, my mother ordered. We're not finished. Actually, We are. I grabbed my purse. I'm done being the family disappointment. I'm done watching you worship Victoria while treating me like I'm broken. I'm just done. Victoria's voice dripped with fake concern. Mom, Dad, she's just having another one of her episodes. Remember that time in high school when she dropped out of the debate team? Always giving up when things get difficult. The familiar script, Victoria diminishing me, my parents believing her, my accomplishments evaporating in the face of their judgment. Goodbye. I cut her off, walking toward the door. Don't try to contact me. If you walk out that door, my father called after me. Don't expect any help when you fail, and you will fail. I paused in the doorway, taking in the tableau one last time. My mother's disapproving grimace, my father's rigid posture, and Victoria's satisfied smirk. They looked exactly as they always had. A perfect family portrait with one glaring imperfection. Me. Watch me, I said, and closed the door behind me. Outside, in the chilled autumn air, I found my grandmother, Elizabeth Wise, waiting by her car. Unlike the rest of the family, she'd built her own business from the ground up after being widowed young. She understood what it meant to fight for recognition in a world that didn't expect you to succeed. They'll never change if you keep playing their game, Eleanor, she said quietly, her eyes sharp despite her 70 years. Sometimes the only way forward is to walk your own path. I know, I whispered, hugging her tightly. I thought they might see me someday. She cupped my face in her weathered hands. The question is, do you see yourself clearly? That's what matters in the end. I didn't know it then, but those would be the last words we'd exchange for 15 years. Present day, the corner office. The quarterly projections are exceptional, Ms. Bradley. The board is unanimously behind your strategy for European expansion. I nodded at the silver-haired chairman as the executive meeting concluded. 15 years had passed since that night, 15 years of silence, of building something they couldn't diminish, of becoming someone they wouldn't recognize. 15 years of peace. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the conference room, I could see the Manhattan skyline, the same view that had graced Forbes when they featured me last month. At 48, I'd achieved what few in the tech industry had. Building a company valued at over $4 billion, pioneering software that revolutionized medical diagnostics, and doing it all as a woman who had started her career when the industry was even more male-dominated than it is now. I ran my fingers through my salt and pepper bob, a style I'd adopted 5 years ago when I decided to stop coloring my hair. The silver strands had initially concerned me, a woman showing her age in an industry obsessed with youth, but I'd come to see them as battle scars, evidence of a life fully lived. Eleanor? Michael Chen, my CTO and right hand for the past 12 years, was waiting by the door. You have a moment? Michael had been with me since the early days, when we were coding in a rented basement office while my daughter did homework in the corner. He knew everything about me, including why I kept my success hidden from my family. What is it? I asked, gathering my tablet and notes. There's a message from your cousin Samantha. She said to tell you it's about your grandmother. My stomach dropped. Is Elizabeth all right? Yes, she's fine. It's about her 80th birthday. Apparently, there's going to be a big party next month. I followed him back to my office, a corner suite with views of Central Park. Lisa, my assistant, handed me a coffee as I settled behind my desk. Why would Samantha contact me about this? I opened the email on my screen. I haven't spoken to anyone in the family except grandmother in 15 years, and even those conversations have been brief and infrequent. Keep reading, Michael said, his expression unreadable. The message was friendly, casual, as if we'd spoken last week instead of a decade ago. Hey stranger, you're not going to believe this, but Grandma Elizabeth's 80th birthday party is next month. The whole family's coming. Victoria's organizing everything, and she's planning something wild. She's been asking about you a lot. I stared at the message, my coffee growing cold beside my laptop. Another message from Samantha popped up. You should come show them who you are now. My finger hovered over the delete button, but something stopped me. Maybe it was time. Time to show them exactly who Eleanor Bradley had become while they weren't watching. There's more, Michael said, setting his tablet in front of me. A private investigator has been asking questions about you. specifically about your company and finances. Victoria, I said immediately, a chill running down my spine, the same feeling I used to get before family dinners. Almost certainly. My contact at Sentinel Security says his wife works for an investigations firm. She overheard your sister's name mentioned in a briefing. My phone chimed with another message from Samantha. OMG, you have to hear what Victoria just told everyone in the family group chat. She says you've been lying about everything. Says she has proof you're not who you say you are. I showed Michael the message, and he whistled low. She's trying to set you up for something big at that party. Let her try, I said, rising to look out the window. 15 floors below, people looked like ants scurrying between skyscrapers. She wants to expose me? Fine, but she might not like what she finds. Flashback the early years. When I was 8 and Victoria was 12, our father took us to his law office on career day. Victoria wore a pink dress with a Peter Pan collar, her blonde hair in perfect ringlets. I wore jeans and a NASA t-shirt, my dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail. This is where the magic happens, Dad said, showing us the conference room where he closed his biggest deals. Where reputations are made and fortunes secured. Victoria nodded solemnly, absorbing his every word. I wandered to the window, more interested in watching the construction of a skyscraper across the street. Eleanor, my father snapped. Pay attention. This matters. I am paying attention, I protested. Just to different things. Later, as we drove home, Victoria sat in the front seat next to Dad, discussing his cases with impressive vocabulary for a 12-year-old. I sat in the back, sketching the building I'd seen, adding imaginary floors and wings. Victoria's going to make a fine lawyer someday, Dad said proudly. She has the mind for it. Eleanor could be an architect, Mom suggested. That's respectable too. If she can focus long enough, Dad replied, meeting my eyes in the rearview mirror. The problem with Eleanor is she's always looking at what's not there instead of what is. It wasn't until decades later that I realized he'd inadvertently described exactly what made me successful in technology, the ability to envision what didn't yet exist. Present day, the detective, James Murphy's office looked exactly like you'd expect a private investigator's workspace to look. Weathered leather chairs, filing cabinets, and a desk that had seen better decades. The man himself was a surprise. Crisp suit, sharp eyes, and a demeanor that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. Ms. Bradley, he said, not standing when I entered. I assumed this is about the surveillance photos. You assumed right. I sat across from him, matching his posture. At 48, I'd spent enough time in rooms full of men who underestimated me to recognize when someone was taking my measure. Want to tell me why you're taking pictures of me for my sister? He studied me for a long moment. I held his gaze, noticing the crow's feet around his eyes, the slight slump of his shoulders. He was older than I'd initially thought, probably in his early 60s. A former police detective, if I had to guess. Professional courtesy prevents me from discussing other clients. His voice was gruff, but not unkind. Professional courtesy didn't stop you from sending me that photo. I'd received it yesterday, a clear shot of me entering our corporate headquarters, the company logo clearly visible behind me. A slight smile crossed his face. Ah, that. Yes, that. I leaned forward. So either you're playing both sides, or something about this case made you reach out. Which is it? Murphy opened a drawer and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Your sister hired me to prove you were lying about your success. She was quite insistent that I'd find evidence of fraud, deception, maybe even criminal activity. He paused, sliding the envelope across the desk. Instead, I found this. Inside were documents, photos, financial records, my company's valuation reports, pictures of my penthouse, my vacation home in the Berkshires, press clippings about my technological innovations. Everything I'd worked for, laid out in black and white. Impressive portfolio, Murphy said quietly. Self-made, clean, legal. The opposite of what your sister wanted to find. So why show me? Because while investigating you, I found something else. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. He pulled another, thinner envelope from his desk. This was misfiled in your sister's background documents. I don't think she knows I have it. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. Inside was a single page, a bank statement from Victoria's charitable organization. Red flags jumped out immediately: irregular transfers, mismatched amounts, funds moving to personal accounts. Is this what I think it is? The irony wasn't lost on me. All those years ago, I'd accused her of exactly this. Murphy nodded, his expression grim. Your sister's been embezzling from her own charity. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. The investigation into her activities started 3 months ago. She doesn't know. Not yet. But she will. I thought back to Victoria as a teenager, borrowing my clothes without asking, taking credit for group projects where I'd done most of the work, charming her way out of trouble while I faced consequences. The pattern had been there all along. Here's the thing, Miss Bradley. Murphy leaned back in his chair. I don't like being used. Your sister hired me to destroy you, fed me lies about who you were. Instead, I found someone who built something real. My phone chimed. Another message from Samantha. Victoria's telling everyone she's going to expose you at Grandma's party. Says she has proof you're living a lie. I showed Murphy the message. He actually laughed. She's planning to present my report at the party, he said. Thinks it'll humiliate you. Show everyone you're a fraud. But instead, she'll be presenting proof of my legitimate success to my entire family. I finished for him, the realization dawning, along with evidence of her own crimes. Murphy gestured to the envelopes. Take them, both of them. Consider it my apology for the surveillance. I stood, gathering the documents. Why are you really helping me? The detective's weathered face softened momentarily. Let's just say I have a sister too, he said quietly. And sometimes karma needs a little push. As I walked back to my car, I thought about Victoria's smirk the last night I saw her, about all the times she'd torn me down to build herself up, about the lies she was spreading now. I called Michael. It's better than we thought, I told him. Victoria's not just trying to expose me. She's going to accidentally expose herself. What do you mean? She's been stealing from her charity, Michael, and she's about to hand me proof of both my success and her crimes in front of our entire family. A low whistle came through the phone. That's poetic justice. The best part? She's paying for her own downfall. She used the family trust account to hire Murphy, the same one she always said I wasn't responsible enough to access. My phone chimed with an email notification. From my mother. Eleanor, please don't come to the party. Don't make things worse than they already are. I deleted it without responding. 15 years ago, I'd walked away from their table feeling broken. This time, I'd walk in knowing exactly who I was, and more importantly, who Victoria really was. Flashback: raising Lily. Mom, why don't we ever see Grandma and Grandpa? Lily asked me once when she was 10, 3 years after our family rupture. We were having dinner in our tiny apartment, celebrating my promotion at work. I set down my fork, considering how to answer. Sometimes, people have different ideas about what's important in life, I said carefully. Your grandparents and I, we disagree about some fundamental things. Like what? Lily persisted, her dark eyes, so much like mine, filled with curiosity. Like what makes a person valuable. They believe it's about appearances, social connections, following a certain path. I believe it's about integrity, hard work, and being true to yourself. Is that why we left? Because they couldn't see your value? Children have a way of distilling complex situations to their essence. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. We left because I needed to find my own path. And I needed you to see that it's okay to walk away from people who don't appreciate you, even family. Do you think they'll ever change their minds about you? She asked. I thought about my parents, about the rigid worldview that defined them. My father, raised in poverty, who'd clawed his way to respectability through sheer determination and conformity. My mother, the perfectionist daughter, who'd learned early that approval came from meeting others' expectations. People rarely change fundamentally, I told her. But sometimes they can learn to see things differently. The question is whether you want to wait around for that to happen. Lily nodded solemnly. I'm glad we didn't wait. That night, after she went to bed, I cried for the first time since leaving my family. Not because I missed them, but because I realized my daughter already understood something it had taken me 33 years to learn. Present day, the confrontation. My grandmother's call came the day before the party. Are you ready for this? She asked, her voice strong despite her years. Ready for Victoria's attack? Yes. I was in my office, reviewing the documents Murphy had provided. No, Elizabeth corrected. For the fallout. Because when this is over, nothing in this family will be the same. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with a message from my father. Your mother's in tears over what you're putting Victoria through. I hope you're happy. I showed it to my grandmother when she arrived at my office an hour later. She read it and laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, they have no idea what's coming, do they? She said, settling into a chair across from my desk. She looked exactly as I remembered, elegant, sharp-eyed, and completely unimpressed by the view that made most visitors gasp. You know about Murphy's report? I asked. I know about a lot of things, she replied, pulling out her phone to show me an email. Like this audit report on your sister's charity. Interesting reading. You requested the audit, I realized. You already knew. I've had my suspicions for years. Victoria's lifestyle never quite matched her reported income, especially after her divorce. When she started asking pointed questions about you, I decided it was time to look more closely at her affairs. Grandma, I won't spoil her big presentation, I promised. She stood, straightening her jacket. Wear that navy suit to the party. The one from your Forbes shoot. It'll look good in the photos. What photos? The ones everyone will be taking when Victoria's presentation backfires. She winked. I may be turning 80, but I still know how to stage a show. After she left, Michael came in. Was that really your grandmother? She seemed terrifying. I suggested. I was going to say magnificent. My phone buzzed one final time. Victoria. Last chance, little sister. Back out now, or I'll destroy everything you've pretended to build. I thought about Murphy's documents in my safe, about grandmother's knowing smile, about 15 years of silence and strength. You can't destroy what's real, I typed back. The birthday beat. The country club ballroom fell silent when I walked in. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, champagne glasses frozen halfway to lips, all eyes turning to watch me enter. I spotted Victoria near the cake table, her face going from smug to shocked as she took in my appearance. The navy suit had the exact effect grandmother had predicted. Professional, powerful, expensive. I recognized the look in Victoria's eyes, the same panic calculation I'd seen whenever her carefully constructed narratives began to unravel. At 52, she was still beautiful, but time had left its mark. Fine lines around her mouth suggested years of tight smiles. The tension in her shoulders spoke of constant vigilance. Eleanor, my mother's voice cracked. What are you? How are you? Happy birthday, Grandma, I said, ignoring her and walking straight to where Elizabeth sat in her place of honor. I handed her a small wrapped package. Right on time, Grandmother said, loud enough for everyone to hear. She patted the empty seat beside her. Sit. Whispers erupted around the room. This seat, right next to the birthday girl, was supposed to be Victoria's. That's my place, my sister said, rushing over. Mom, tell her. Let her sit, Grandmother cut in. Her tone left no room for argument. It's my birthday. I'll seat who I want where I want. I caught my father's eye across the room. At 76, he looked smaller somehow, diminished by time in a way I hadn't expected. He looked away first. The next hour was a symphony of awkward small talk and pointed questions. Relatives I hadn't seen in years suddenly wanted to know everything about my life. I gave them nothing, just smiled and turned their questions back on them. Enough chit-chat, Victoria finally announced, tapping her glass. It's time for the special presentation I prepared. She pulled out a thick envelope of Murphy's report and moved to the small podium set up near grandmother's chair. My heart raced, but I maintained my composure, remembering all the board meetings and investor presentations where I'd had to appear confident while facing uncertainty. Before we begin, my mother interrupted. Perhaps Eleanor should step out. No, grandmother said firmly. Everyone stays. Victoria cleared her throat, her diamond earrings catching the light as she tossed her blonde hair back. As you all know, family means everything to me. That's why it breaks my heart to expose what I'm about to expose. She looked directly at me. Some people have been deceiving us, living lies, pretending to be something they're not. I sat back, relaxed, letting her talk. There was a time when her words would have cut me to the quick, when her disapproval would have devastated me. That time was long past. I hired a private investigator, she continued, pride in her voice, to uncover the truth about my sister's supposed success. And what he found, show us, grandmother interrupted. Stop talking and show us what he found. Victoria faltered slightly but recovered. Of course. I'll start with these photos. She pulled out the first one. Me entering my office building, the company logo clearly visible behind me. This is where my sister claims to work, she said. A tech company valued at. She stopped, actually reading the paper for the first time. Her face went pale. $4 billion. The room was dead silent now. Everyone watching as Victoria's hands started shaking. Read it, grandmother commanded. Read what that investigator found about Eleanor. She's the CEO, Victoria whispered. The company, it's hers. All of it. My mother made a choking sound. My father's whiskey glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. Keep going, grandmother urged. There's more, isn't there? But Victoria had reached the last pages, the ones about her charity. I saw the moment she recognized what she was holding. Her face went from pale to gray. I think there's been a mistake, she stammered. These papers got mixed up. No mistake, I said, standing. Murphy is very thorough. He documents everything. I walked toward her, stopping a few feet away. Victoria, we don't have to do this here. We can talk privately. It was an olive branch, a chance for her to salvage some dignity. Part of me, the part that remembered being sisters before we became rivals, wanted to spare her the public humiliation. But Victoria had never been good at recognizing lifelines. You did this. She shrieked, backing away. You set me up. Did I force you to hire a pie? I asked calmly. Did I make you steal from your charity? Did I make you use the family trust without authorization? Those records are private. Victoria clutched the papers to her chest. Like the charity's records? I asked softly. The ones showing how you diverted funds meant for children's medical care to pay for your Manhattan apartment? The room erupted in confused questions. Relatives demanding explanations, my mother crying again, but for a different reason now. My father trying to reach Victoria, who was backing away from the podium. Enough. Grandmother's voice cut through the chaos. She turned to Victoria. You wanted to expose the truth? Well, congratulations. You did. But not the truth you expected. Victoria looked around wildly, seeing the faces of our family transformed from shock to understanding to judgment. Then she ran straight out of the ballroom, leaving her damning presentation behind. Grandmother picked up her champagne glass. Well, she said calmly, I'd say this is turning out to be quite the memorable birthday party. She smiled at me. And we haven't even had cake yet. Epilogue New Beginnings. My office phone rang at 2:43 a.m. A week after the party. The number was blocked, but I knew who it was. Hello. It paused then. How did you know it was me? Because you always did your worst damage in the middle of the night, I said, leaning back in my chair, looking out at the city lights. What do you want, Victoria? I'm out on bail, she said, as if that explained everything. Mom and Dad won't answer my calls. No one will. That tends to happen when you steal from sick children. I didn't. She stopped. It wasn't supposed to be like this. You were supposed to be the failure, the disappointment, not me. Sorry to ruin your narrative. I thought of all the years I'd spent trying to earn my family's approval, all the energy wasted seeking validation from people who couldn't see past their own expectations. Can't you help me? Victoria's voice cracked. You have money now. Influence. You could make this go away. Like you tried to make me go away? I asked quietly. Silence. That's what I thought. I stood up, walking to the window. The city was beautiful at night, a tapestry of lights and possibility. I'll help you get a good lawyer, Victoria. That's all I can offer. Why would you even do that much? She asked, her voice small. Because unlike you, I don't need to see others fail to feel successful. After we hung up, I opened my email to find a message from my mother, subject line, please read. Eleanor, your father and I are selling the house. The one we always said you weren't good enough to live up to. The one Victoria was supposed to inherit. We're donating the proceeds to Elizabeth's new foundation as restitution for what Victoria stole. We don't expect forgiveness. We don't deserve it. But you deserve to know that we finally see you. Not as we wanted you to be, but as you are. You won. Not because you proved us wrong, but because you proved yourself right. I was still staring at the screen when Lisa announced my grandmother's arrival. Elizabeth walked in, impeccable as always despite the hour. Good. You're still here. We need to talk about the foundation launch. She sat down, pulled out a folder. The dog called. Victoria took a plea deal. She's going away for a while. How long? I asked. Long enough to learn what it feels like to lose everything. She met my eyes. Like you did once. I didn't lose everything. I corrected her. I left everything. There's a difference. Yes, there is. She opened the folder. Now, about this foundation. I'm thinking big. Real change, real help for families in need. No fake charities, no embezzlement, no lies. She looked up at me. Think you can handle that? I thought about Victoria's late night call, about my mother's email, about that dinner 15 years ago when I walked away with nothing but my dignity. Actually, I said, pulling up a proposal on my laptop. I have some ideas. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily, now 22 and in her final year of college. Just saw Grandma Elizabeth's foundation announcement. I'm proud of you, Mom. Not for your success, but for how you're using it. Looking at the foundation plan spread across my desk, I realized something important. I didn't need revenge anymore. I didn't even need my family's approval. I had something better, the truth about who I'd become, and more importantly, who I'd always been. Stronger than their doubts, bigger than their limitations, and finally, completely free of their shadows. Ready to change some lives? Grandmother asked, pen poised over the foundation papers. I signed my name, and not as Victoria's sister, not as my parents' disappointment, but as exactly who I was meant to be, who I'd always been.